So how is progress represented in Key Stage 2 in ASP? So here we can see right at the top of the Key Stage 2 tab, we have the progress for reading, writing and maths separated. So you can see that in this school, reading, the results were 1.27 scaled scores above the national average if the national average consisted entirely of pupils with the same mix of Key Stage 1 average point score as your school has. Now, if you have got a high figure relative to the number of pupils, then you will be significantly above. If it's a low figure, a negative figure, then you'll be significantly below. Otherwise, you'll be average, which has previously been called in line with the national average or close to the national average. Around 60% of schools per subject are average. And you can tell what you are. Firstly, it says so, but secondly, from the confidence interval. If one figure is negative and one figure is positive, then you will be average. If they're both positive, then you will be significantly above. If both figures are negative, you'll be significantly below. And the difference between well above and above is if you are in the top 10% of all schools and you're significantly above average. So we're looking at roughly around the 3.1 threshold. So you need to have both of these figures positive and about plus 3.1. So that's the difference between well above and above, the difference between well below and below. This Key Stage 2 tab continues with reading, writing and maths combined, both at the expected standard and at the greater depth, the higher standard. However, I have not known any Ofsted inspectors to use reading and writing and maths combined at the higher standard. I have seen them use reading at the higher standard and maths at the higher standard and writing at the higher standard, just not the combined figure. So between these two figures, we have the floor standard. And then we have the average scaled score. Now the average scaled score is only for pupils who took the test. So only those who got a scaled score between 80 and 120. So that's the only drawback I can see, apart from your students' welfare. If you have a borderline student, somebody who could do 3, 4, 5 raw marks on a particular day, if they do, they'll be included in the scaled score and probably lower your average scaled score, but it would raise your progress. So let's have a look at the explore data in detail. So either here in the scaled score or here in the progress. This gets us to the same cohort types that we had at Key Stage 1 with a few additions. Firstly, we have what used to be called on-roll in years 5 and 6. It's now called non-mobile, but I prefer to use my own terminology because it's actually clearer for me. But it means exactly the same thing. And then we have prior attainment, your low overall, middle overall and high overall. And then reading low, reading middle, reading high, writing low, writing middle, writing high, and maths low, maths middle, maths high. Ofsted only uses the overall. It used to use a combination of the overall and the subject low, middle and high in 2016. It then didn't want to use it in 2017 and change it now to the overall. So your middle overall prior attainers, they are pupils who have an average point score at Key Stage 1 of between 12 and 17.99. You have then your maths or reading or writing progress, your cohort, and you used to have just one score, your progress score. You now have your adjusted score and your unadjusted score. Your adjusted score takes account of pupils who scored underneath the floor, underneath the 1%, bottom 1% of all pupils, that they have raised that individual progress up. So I would use the adjusted score and completely ignore the unadjusted score. Then you have that cohort, by the way, of course, are just the cohort of pupils who have a Key Stage 1 average point score. Then we have your attainment, you have your cohort, regardless of whether they got a Key Stage 1 average point score. Achieving the expected standard compared to national benchmark. As a reminder, your disadvantaged pupils, your free school meal pupils, they will be compared with the national other. Exceeding the expected standard or getting a high score, as it may now be called. And then your average scaled score for pupils who were entered into the exams and got a scaled score of 80 to 120. Just like Key Stage 1, there are filters as well, and these filters also include non-mobile and prior attainment band. It seems that in 2017 you could use free school meals, which was free school meals 6, and children looked after. Those seem no longer to be the case. And this is how Key Stage 2 Progress and Attainment is shown for a single year in the ASP. So now would probably be a really good time to pause this video and have a look at your own school's results. There are two new features at Key Stage 2. First of all, if you go to the list of reports, you can click on the Key Stage 2 pupil list. So this gives 8 tables. So with pupil context, Key Stage 1 prior attainment, and the results in reading, maths, writing, reading, writing, maths combined, GPS, and science. Now 8 tables on screen may seem a lot to look at. So instead, you can click download to print or save, and you can get it to save as an Excel spreadsheet. And then you can just scroll through the one spreadsheet, hide any columns you don't want to see. Secondly, it used to be called Schools Own Data in Raise Online. This was the ability to remove pupils from your results or to alter their scores, going from the unvalidated to the validated version, for instance. Well, this was removed or not included in ASP due to lack of customer demand in 2017. It has partly come back in 2018 in the sense that you can remove pupils from your analysis. You can't adjust their scores. And this is called data management. You can access data management at the top of the screen, or there's a few buttons further down, a few hyperlinks. If you are using data management, then this is your ASP default view changes to this is your custom view. You can always go back to your standard ASP view at any time. So if we click on data management, we can select a particular key stage 2, key stage 1, or phonics. And then we have a series of names with tick boxes next to them. You are ticking pupils that you want to remove. So don't select all and then click remove and save changes, because you'll get the error message you can't remove all of the pupils within a key stage. So the only reason to use this select all button is if you wanted to remove all of the pupils and then reinsert, that's to say untick certain pupils, so you have a very small select pupils. Once you have done this, you can see I've successfully removed 3 pupils. You can then go into your reports. You'll have a slightly reduced list of reports, but it's still fairly sufficient for what you need to do. And this is data management, allowing you to remove individual pupils to create your own custom analysis. There have been 2 new tabs added to ASP in 2018. Firstly is the 3-year average. Ofsted, or the DfE, have calculated your reading, writing and maths combined over the 3 years. Now, this is not just an average of your 3 years, because you might have different levels of cohort in these 3 years. Instead, it's like you have all of your pupils from the 3 years combined into one big year group and then averaged out. So this allows, say, if you have cohorts of 40, 40, 60, for there to be more weight on the 60. It's a per pupil weighting, so it's a weighted average. Now, these averages are for reading, writing, maths at the expected and the higher standard, and the average scaled score for reading and for maths. In addition, you also have the time series. So these show your 3 individual years, firstly for those 4 measures I just said, and then for progress in reading, in writing, and in maths. I suspect the reason why there isn't a combined reading, writing, maths figure for progress, or combined reading figure for all of the 3 years, is because of this question mark here. This is when the attainment, the progress changed. So we have the adjusted progress, which meant that 1% of pupils' progress were raised up. For me, it's not that big a change, and they could have combined it in one. Of course, another reason why we might not have combined progress is when 2020 comes, we'll have a different measure of progressing because we'll have Key Stage 2 pupils who will have had the new curriculum at Key Stage 1. Now, the problem with all of this is you can't see any individual pupil. And this is able to be done with what's called the View Pupil Breakdown. This looks like you're going to click on a line chart, but you're not. You're going to be clicking on a scatter graph or scatter plot, as they are called in here. So this allows you to see individual pupils. So here we have a pupil, level 3 pupil with a Key Stage 1 attainment of 20. So that would be a level 3 pupil who got a progress score of -12, -13. You can change what you're looking at, reading, writing, maths, and you can change what the colours mean, disadvantage or not, gender, special educational needs, first language, and whether their progress score has been adjusted upwards. You can also zoom in and out, but I prefer not to do that because it centres on the centre. Instead, I use a wheel mouse and just wheel in, scroll my way in if I wanted to. If you click on any particular shape, you see what pupil is identified by that shape. However, if there are 2 shapes, one underneath each other, you will only see the information about the first pupil. Now, what I like to do with these scatter graphs is I divide them up into 4 zones. So pupils who have made much bigger progress than the national, those who made positive, those who made negative, and those who made much weaker progress than the national expectations. So the way of doing this, by just counting the number of pupils, is an alternative way of looking at progress. Here I can usually find some positive stories even for schools with a progress score of -3 or -4. For instance, you might have a pupil who is a level 1 or level 2C who made marvellous progress. These aren't the only scatter plots which are available in the ASP. If I go back to the Key Stage 2 tab and scroll down, there is another View Pupil Breakdown. It looks identical to the one in progress, but the one underneath average scaled score actually gives you an attainment scatter graph. So this, instead of plotting Key Stage 1 prior attainment against progress, does it against Key Stage 1 attainment against Key Stage 2 attainment with your scaled scores. In the latest version, Ofsted, the DfE, have removed the national average, which for me is a bit of a shame because I could tell whether a pupil had made positive progress or negative progress. However, without that national average line, you can still use this. I divide up this scatter graph into 5 different sections. The first section are pupils with a Key Stage 1 prior attainment of under 14 and a scaled score in Key Stage 2 of 100 or more. These were pupils that were not expected to pass. They were below that 50-50% chance of passing, and yet they did. How about that for a good news story for your school? the second section, pupils with a Key Stage 1 prior attainment score of under 14 and a scaled score under 100. They weren't expected to pass, they didn't pass, but they may have had positive progress. I don't particularly like to talk about this third section, pupils who expected to pass and didn't, so let's move on. This final section I divide into two, a scaled score between 100 and 109, and a scaled score of 110 and above. And you will see from recent Ofsted inspections, and you'll find an analysis of this if you come to our website and click on blog, Ofsted inspection blog, and Key Stage 2 attainment, that there is a lot of focus obviously at the expected standard, but equally at the high standard. 43 out of the 50 inspections commented about the high standard. So that's why I divide it this way. So again, I look at individual pupils in this matter. So now let's have some points to ponder about Key Stage 2. So here are some areas to investigate for Key Stage 2. Name of subject. So we're not talking science here, or GPS, we're talking maths, reading, writing. Was at or above national for all prior attainment groups or for your low, middle and high prior attainment groups. So you can see the percentages needed in the ASP. Alternatively, were you in the bottom 20% for at least 3 years for all pupils? So you need to be around the 60-62% mark for reading and maths for 2018 and 2017, and you need to be in the low 50s or below in 2016. The 3-year average reading attainment score was in the top or bottom 10%. Now you can get this information in the ASP 3-year trend tab. And to be in the top or bottom 10%, you need to be around the 107.5 mark or below 100.7. Progress in name of subject was significantly above average and in the highest 10%, or significantly below average and in the lowest 10%. In other words, were you well above average or were you well below average? So that is what all of this means. So you need to have around 3.2 or above to get that as a strength, or below minus 2.8 in reading and minus 3.2, minus 3.3 in maths. Now with the progress trend, we're not talking about the last 3 years, we're only talking here about the last 2 years. Was your progress in the top or bottom 20% for all pupils, for your low, middle or high prior attainers? So notice you need at least 6 pupils in each year for this to become a trend. So I have seen, for instance, maths, reading and writing progress was in the top 20% for at least 2 years for your middle and your high prior attainers, which might immediately make you go, well, what about our low prior attainers? Well, it turns out there were only 5 low prior attainers, so that wasn't eligible to be on the front page. However, when you investigate it, you actually find you were in the top 20%. So don't assume the absence is an absence because you didn't make the target. It might just be that you had low cohort. So what do you need to get this for all pupils? Well, you need around a plus 2.1, plus 2.2 or so in reading and maths, slightly lower in writing. And for the bottom 20%, you need around minus 1.8, minus 2, minus 2.2. It's roughly the same for your middle and high prior attainers. However, because of the wide range of progress that your low prior attainers can get, you need around plus 5 or minus 5 to get that as a strength or weakness. There are some additional key stage 2 statements. If your score has been adjusted, in other words, your pupils have met and gone below that minimum threshold that you can get for progress, and if it's made a change to your school score of at least 0.1, then this will be recorded. So your adjusted progress score in reading or maths was 0.2 higher than the adjusted score. 3 pupils had an adjustment to their score. Name the subject. Progress for SEN support was significantly above or below the national for all pupils over the last 2 years. This seems to be very rare. I have not actually seen this being used in any IDSR I have seen. And then there is a note for junior schools, which generally have higher attainment but lower progress scores. So if your school is a junior school, then inspectors should be aware of this and consider a wide range of information and data, including the progress of current pupils in all year groups. So in the next video, we'll have a look at some points to ponder for Key Stage 2. In this video, I want to have a look at your disadvantaged pupils, which is a particular area of interest for Ofsted inspectors. Pupils are defined as disadvantaged if 6 years or have been looked after continuously in care for 1 day or more. In 2014, it used to be 6 months, it's now 1 day. Or have left care through adoption or another formal route. And just a reminder, the Ofsted Inspection Handbook says that inspectors will consider the progress made compared to that nationally by other pupils. And in doing this, inspectors will take into account the progress and attainment of non-disadvantaged pupils and will consider the impact of what a school is doing to reduce the differences. So there is a second tab underneath the Key Stage 2 tab, which is specifically for Key Stage 2 disadvantaged pupils. So it starts off with the average progress for disadvantaged pupils. So here we can see our progress. You can see the confidence interval, so you know if it's significantly above or significantly below. However, that is not actually calculated. And you can see the national average for non-disadvantaged pupils. Then you can view the pupil breakdown at any point. That will give us the scatter plots that we had previously looked at. We can also see your prior attainment of disadvantaged pupils over the last 3 years based on the Key Stage 1 average point score for your non-disadvantaged and your disadvantaged, so you can see if there's a gap. And then we see the average progress in reading, writing and maths separately for your low prior attainers, your middle prior attainers and your high prior attainers, for all of your pupils and your disadvantaged pupils. So again, the idea behind this is to see if there's a gap. So here for your middle prior attainers, you have 31 prior attainers in this fictitious school with a progress score of plus 2.29, which is above national average, significantly above. Both the confidence interval figures are positive. However, for your 5 disadvantaged middle prior attainer pupils, the progress score is actually negative, so there's a gap of about 2.7. However, Ofsted will not have a look at individual cohorts under 11 unless they're looking at part of a trend, multiple years figures, in which case they can have a look at 6 or more in each year. So these 5 middle prior attainers, they won't be considered by Ofsted. Then have a look at your reading and writing and maths combined. your school figures are compared to the national other. So it says national average, this is the national other. And then your attainment of your low, middle and high priority attainers for all and disadvantaged, both at the expected standard and at the high standard. And then finally, your average scaled score for disadvantaged pupils compared to the national other. There have been lots of other instances in the main Key Stage 2 tab which look at disadvantaged pupils, but they are all brought together here, and you can always explore data in detail and have a look at scatter plots if you would like as well. So now let's have a look at some points to ponder with regards to your disadvantaged pupils. Let's see how your Key Stage 2 disadvantaged pupils are represented in your IDSR. Well, unlike the 2017 version, it is only being represented in the progress analysis that you can see here. So here you can see your disadvantaged pupils, whether they are in line, below, well below average, above or well below average. And not only can the comparator be done with the 0, with the national average, but it can also be done with the national other, this solid green line. So if the entirety of this shape is to the left, the national other, then you are significantly below the national other. For an attainment analysis, please see your ASP report. However, that doesn't mean that the areas to investigate do not include Key Stage 2 attainment. It is solely that Ofsted thinks that it is duplicatory to put it in both the IDSR and the ASP. So let's have a look at the areas to investigate for Key Stage 2 disadvantaged. So name of subject at the expected standard was at or above the national for disadvantaged pupils, which in reality was, are you above the national other? Was your maths, reading and writing attainment in the bottom 20% for at least 2 years for disadvantaged pupils? Again, you won't actually find these figures in your IDSR. You will have to look in the ASP. So we're talking, was your reading and maths in the mid-40s or so or below? For larger schools, those who have got at least 11 for disadvantaged lower, disadvantaged middle and disadvantaged higher, then Ofsted may take those groups and say, were you significantly above or significantly below in terms of progress? Were you significantly above national, the national other? Were you significantly below the national other? Or were you significantly below the national disadvantaged? So this will only happen if you have got particularly high disadvantaged cohorts. Over the last 2 years, were you in the top or bottom 20%? So we're looking at around plus 2.2 in reading and plus 1.9 in maths. But in the bottom 20%, we're looking at more minus 3.2, minus 3.5 figures. And those are the areas to investigate for Key Stage 2 disadvantaged. As I say, you will need to supplement your IDSR with ASP as well to get the full picture. The final type I'd like to talk about in this course is the question level analysis. Unlike everything else in the ASP, this is actually uploaded in late July, so only a few weeks after you have received your results. It is available for Year 6 at primary phase and incoming Year 7 at the secondary phase. So here's what we get to the question level analysis. We have reading, GPS, with spelling separately, and maths. If I click on the Open All button, you can see that there are between 5 and 9 strands for each of the subjects, with number of marks available, your school percentage, the national percentage, and the difference between school and national. So there are 5 strands for reading. Now bear in mind, not all strands are created equally. For example, 3 strands amount to 90% of all of the available marks. So you might find you are, say, 30-40% below national for make comparisons within the text. However, it was only worth 2 marks out of 50, 4% of the exams. So you should really concentrate on improving your pupils' attainment throughout, but perhaps on the 3 to 4 strands which have the most marks. For GPS, it was 3 or 4 strands which were high, so grammatical terms, punctuation and spelling, and if you wanted a 4th, verb forms. And in maths there were 9 strands, the top 4 strands being calculations, fractions, decimals and percentages, measurement, and number and place value. So if I go back to the reading and click on View Data by Question, we have all of the questions going down, the strand to which they're identified, marks available between 1 and 3 marks, your school percentage, national percentage, and the difference in terms of percentage of marks obtained. A positive figure means that your school is above national. And then we have pupils who attempted the question, your school and the difference from national. So we see that, for instance, in the reading third text or halfway through the first maths paper, the number of pupils who don't even attempt the questions increases enormously, which is also the case for questions which are worth 2 or 3 marks. If we go back to the main screen and click on View Data by Pupil, we will see the pupils' names on the left hand side and the strands running across and the percentage of marks obtained in each strand. You can also view the test paper. This takes us to the public website where you can view the reading booklet, the answer booklet, and the mark scheme. This shows how much work is required, for instance, in a 3-mark question to get 1 mark. So it may be that pupils can't get all the way through the question and they give up because they know they're not going to get the right answer. However, if they got the first bit of the question right, then they may be able to get 1 mark out of 3. So here is an example. Here is the maths mark scheme. So if I go down there and scroll to some of the multiple marks questions. So here we have 2 marks. Working must be carried through to reach a final answer for the award of 1 mark. So it needn't to be completely correct, but you could get 1 mark for getting so far. So if the answer is incorrect, award 1 mark where there are formal methods of division, even if there is an arithmetic error. Further on, award 2 marks for all symbols correct, award 1 mark for 3 symbols correct, award 1 mark for 2 correct numbers instead of 3. In this 3-mark question, award 2 marks if 6,306.3 is calculated, award 1 mark for evidence of an appropriate method. In other words, you don't even have to get the answer right as long as there is only 1 arithmetic error. So answer need not be obtained for the award of 1 mark. So these mark schemes well worth a read. There is for me a problem with the QLA as presented in the ASP. Here we have an example. 110 marks for the maths, which were 40, 35 and 35, 3 different papers. However, if you add up the individual marks in Maths Paper 2, it doesn't come to 35, it comes to 45. And similarly for Maths Paper 3, it doesn't come to 35. If you add up these figures, it comes to 50. And what I believe has happened is that somebody has assigned a question to more than one different category and awarded full marks to each. So a 2-mark question, they've put 2 marks in calculations and 2 marks in algebra. And really, you should be putting 1 mark into each. So out of 110, they've allocated 135 marks. Similarly for GPS, SPAG, out of 50 marks that are available excluding the spelling, there are 55 allocated to the individual strands. That for me is a bit of a problem. You can download your pupils' individual question results by going to the download section at the top of the screen and clicking on data in CSV format. It will download as a zip, but when you open up the zip, you will have 6 files with QLA data. Don't just double click on them, they will open in Notepad. Instead, if you open up Excel and open them in Excel, you will see you have your pupils' names, characteristics and so forth, and then what they got for each individual question with an N if they have not attempted the question. So this is information that you can get through the question level analysis from the ASP website. Just like with the rest of Key Stage 2, there's also a form of data management included. This is called creating a custom group, and it's slightly different. Instead of all of those tick boxes, you have to enter their UPNs. The reason why the DfE has chosen that is for Year 7 incoming, so secondary schools. The government doesn't know what pupils have applied to the individual secondary schools, so they can enter their UPNs and get an analysis of how the incoming Year 7 did at SATs. So if you enter your UPNs, you'll then have a custom view. Here you can see we have got this view based on 7 pupils. Bear in mind, of course, that the QLA is only for pupils who have entered the exam, so it's not for those for which a teacher assessment has been used instead. And that is the QLA in the ASP. Thank you very much for watching this video. Why not like us and subscribe to this channel? And why not subscribe to our free premium mailing list, where you can get 10% off our best prices and advance notice on what's happening.